All right, and now we wait, right? Are you feeling lucky on the dice?
I think so. I think we have a lot of D20s,
Yeah.
so it's a weighted dice for us on our team.
You rewrote the online version, so it's just rolls
Exactly,
straight
yeah.
20s. Okay, very cool.
Have you used an online platform before?
Yeah. So we'll bring that up. It's nice because you can choose through the different expansion decks, and then you can go through and set up your starting condition, right? So just like you're in physical cards, I can actually pick out each of the cards.
Yeah, yeah. I know they were trying to do like a Steam version too. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's out there. It's the tabletop simulator. So if you buy
Yeah,
that game, then you can add backdoors and breaches there. And that I haven't played with that one. I think that actually has the competitive because you can play head to head. Not what we're doing today, but that is an option there as well, which is pretty cool. See, we'll wait another minute. Malcolm gets set up. Technical difficulties always with the first time using some new tools, right? That's all right. So let's go ahead and get started. Malcolm's going to be joining us shortly as another defender. So, Alex, you don't have to do this by yourself. But what we're going to do is start off with a quick introduction here so folks can figure out what it is exactly we're attempting to do today. Go through some of the rules around backdoors and breaches, and then we're going to play a game live. This could be pretty quick. Alex is telling me he's weighted the dies and he'll roll 420s in a row and be done. So maybe this will be only a couple minutes long, or maybe he won't end up solving the incident. All right. So with that, backdoors and breaches. This is an incident response tabletop card game created by the folks over at Black Hills Information Security. And this is something, the reason why specifically we're playing today is the larger Dense Secure team at Wolf and Company created an expansion deck. And so you can see that up here. There's a lot of cards. It's a little over 200 different attack cards at this point, which is awesome, right? And the whole concept here is you can then start to gamify the tabletop exercise process in a few different ways. One of them is you can combine a lot of different attacker steps. So here, we'll go through what the different cards and aspects of the game are, but there's a lot of different combinations of attack scenarios, which helps you, stay on your feet and keep thinking of, what if that happens to us? The other aspect that's really great is you're at the mercy of rolling a 20-sided die when you try and figure out if a tool or process actually works during your response exercise, which is fun because that actually makes it a little bit more real because not everything always works. And one of the problems that tabletop scenarios can run into is the fact that someone asks, "Hey, can we do XYZ?" And you say, "Yeah, we've got that tool." Okay, well, is it actually deployed everywhere, configured properly, online reporting, right? Are the run books written, procedures written? Everyone knows how to do it. You've got backups and cross training and everything else, right? The tabletop scenario doesn't always go that far. So when we get into the game here, we bring in some of that randomness to try and make it a little more realistic. All right, so like I said, we blocked off an hour. That's if the rolls are bad, or Alex and Malcolm have a lot of disagreements as far as what their next step is going to be. So we have Alex and Malcolm here, also members of the Den Secure team at Wolf. And really what they're going to be doing is acting as the defenders. And what I'm going to do is try and guide them through the scenario here. We're going to be playing through the online version. So you can go to play.backdoorsandbreaches.com to do this yourself. Also, if you wanted to buy some of the physical cards, the Spearfish General Store linked here has those. They'll ship them right to your door, or find us, find Black Hills, any of the other folks with expansion decks at any conference. I'm sure they've got plenty they'd be happy to hand out. All right, so the rules. How do we actually play? I'm taking the role of the incident captain here today. I set up this attack scenario for Alex and Malcolm to work through. What they're going to try and do is, over the course of 10 turns, try and reveal these 4 attack cards. The initial compromise: how do the attackers get into the environment? Pivot and escalate, just like it sounds. How do they pivot from one machine to the other to another, move throughout the environment? How do they escalate their privileges? Throughout all of this, how do they exfiltrate data or maintain a command and control environment? And then how do they maintain persistence within there? These guys are going to be randomly assigned 4 procedure cards, and those 4 are going to be their established procedures. So that means these are the tools that they're going to be able to leverage during the response exercise to get a benefit, right? So not just having the tool, but having the tool and having it hopefully deployed fully, properly. They've got the run books in place, and really being able to use this to the full extent of that control. So for those 4 procedures, when they roll the die, they're going to get an additional 3 points on that. So if they roll a 1, it's actually going to count as a 4 for them. For all of the other procedures, they don't get any modifiers. So it's just whatever you roll is what you guys are going to get. I keep talking about this 20-sided die. So when you roll that, if you roll a 1 through a 10, that's going to be considered a fail. So if you say, we want to look at our sim to see if there's logs of XYZ activity, great. We'll pull up that procedure card, kind of talk a little bit about what that entails, roll the die. If you roll a 1 through a 10, hey, sorry, nothing's there in the sim. Try something else. Because you failed on that procedure, you can't go back to the sim for another 3 turns. After that, you can try again. But again, you only get 10 turns total to solve the whole incident. If you do roll an 11 through 20 on that, great. That actually works. If that matches up to one of the attack cards that we have, you'll flip that over, and now you're down to 3 left. If it is a successful roll, you'll be able to call that procedure again. So some of these procedures are going to cover more than one attack card, potentially. And each time, each successful roll is only going to reveal one of those cards. So you can go back to it if you need to. The last thing here is, if you roll a 1, a 20, and so being a true 20, not 17 with a +3 modifier. So a 1, a 20, or if you have 3 failed rolls in a row, we're going to bring in an inject card. And so some of these are good, very few of them, but some of them are good, where they may reveal one of the attacker cards or grant you an extra turn. Most of them are probably bad, right? Because when things are going wrong in an incident, usually when it rains, it pours. So those may come in. Some of them just introduce a little bit of chaos to the game. And again, try and bring some of that real life stress to the response. What we would like to do is, for any folks that are here live and you have suggestions for these 2 defenders, because they don't necessarily know what these cards are. If you have, recommendations for procedures they should call, or even more importantly, because the whole point of this is to learn, if you have resources or suggestions or comments or anything else about some of the procedure cards being talked about, the tools, or the attack cards themselves, and some of those real world instances, feel free to share those so that everyone else can learn along with us. Alex, Malcolm, any questions before we get going?
No. And for me, we're gonna figure everything out in a couple seconds. So
yeah,
waited that.
Okay, yeah, Malcolm. Before you jumped on, Alex said he weighted all the dies and he's going to roll 4 20s in a row, so you guys can get out of here quickly.
Whatever it takes to win.
All right. Cool. So before we give the quick scenario introduction, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, certainly. My name is Alex Martirosian. I'm one of the lead penetration testers with the Densecure group. And first, wanted to give a shout out to the Black Hills team, specifically Deb and Jason. We worked very closely with them to create this expansion deck that we're going to showcase today. It was a lot of fun working hand in hand, just ensuring that we can get the deck released. So really exciting to kind of offer a gamified approach to tabletop exercises. Sean mentioned it initially, but oftentimes in the industry, we're kind of dealing with death by PowerPoint, going through slides and kind of these written exercises. So it's really exciting, especially if you like playing games or getting more people involved kind of earlier in the cybersecurity process. Just really excited to see and play this game and hopefully get more people involved with tabletop exercises and learning about cybersecurity. Malcolm, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Malcolm Grant. I'm one of the pen testers also. I actually love Black Hills. John Strand was how I got my introduction to like the cyber field and incident response. He actually taught my GCIH class, which was really cool. Super excited. I love that they gamified these things. Excited to play, excited to win.
Seems like our
All right.
incident
So
captain.
I'm going to keep my video off because it looked like that was freezing up a little bit. But all right. So the game should be up. So let's get playing. All right. So with this, just to give a little background of the environment you guys are working in, you're new to the company, right? Hey, you're new. Let's jump right into an incident response. You're actually the first two security hires for this organization. So you're trying to figure out, what's going on from kind of everything, right? Tools, processes, etc. We can see here the 4 established procedures you've gotten, and I swear these are random. I didn't pick these for you. Permissions audit, endpoint security protection analysis, cloud event log analysis, and network threat hunting. So, hey, it seems like even though they weren't necessarily security hires beforehand, they actually implemented some pretty cool things. For folks that may not be as familiar with it, when you're using the online version here, if you click into a card, it'll bring up a larger view for you. And you can see a couple things here. Right after the title, you see a description. What is this actually doing for you? In this case, we're going through and looking at, does everyone have the rights that they need for different systems? And you've got a process to make sure, there's not permission, scope creep, anything like that. And then all of these cards are also going to give you some example tools. And the whole point here is you can take this and use this as a guide to go and learn more. So in this case, we've got 4 tools. You can go, start to Google and read about, learn a bit more. That's going to be a consistent thing across the procedures here. So you guys are new hires, right? Few weeks into the job, you're still trying to figure out exactly, what different tools different departments are using because they didn't have an established security program in place. So, unfortunately, there's not a good inventory necessarily of what tool is being used for what purpose. With that, you got a comment when you went to go refill your coffee that someone was being bothered by a bunch of prompts to update their TeamViewer installation. And so from there, it's okay. Well, that's strange. You haven't heard TeamViewer before. And at that point, you say, hey, something might be going on, and let's dig into this. So with that initial introduction, where do you guys want to start?
So the first thing I heard was interesting was TeamViewer, which is a remote access tool and commonly used by threat actors to establish command and control. But we're relatively new at the same time, so we don't know if the IT team is using TeamViewer.
We're new to the
manage
company.
desktop. New to the company. That's right. But I guess the question is, we don't know the tools that that company is using just yet in terms of, is TeamViewer an established remote access tool? So that could be something they are legitimately using, or is it a threat actor that's convinced a user to install TeamViewer and is asking them to establish remote control? So TeamViewer seems pretty sketchy. I don't think it's going to be all too likely that our company is using it. And I guess the question is, if we're trying to investigate if TeamViewer was established as malicious, I guess I have two thoughts. It'll be the asset inventory, if we could reconcile like a software inventory to ensure that's approved software. Not sure if we have that procedure. What do you think, Malcolm?
Oh yeah,
Analysis or something like that.
I'm right there with you. We're new to the company, but Sean didn't say we're new to security. So with that being said, I knew TeamViewer was used during Cash App for all those scams and establishing remote control from other people. Hey, download this and I'll help set up your account, or I'll transfer, I'll do whatever for you. I actually know a victim of that. So yeah, that's where I would start. Either endpoint security analysis, check our procedures to see if we're allowed to have that software. And the question I would have would be, is TeamViewer already installed? Or, where is he at in this part of the scam?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that's tricky too. Someone just mentioned in the chat, what if the inventory isn't well documented, which is something we commonly see with asset inventories of, you could start the process, but it never really just ends by beginning. It's a continuous battle of ensuring that what you have on the list is actually accurate and lined up with real time. So I like the idea of the endpoint security analysis to get started, to determine was TeamViewer actually installed, because there should be at least a log file that we can investigate maybe a little bit further to see if a connection was established. Usually there's some sort of cache, or in the app data, we can at least see the logs of if TeamViewer was actually utilized in any event. So I think that could be interesting for us to, and probably the best card for us to play, especially with it being an established procedure. Our company at least has endpoint security protection analysis. We're going to go +3. Malcolm, do you think it's a good idea to?
Yeah, let's roll with it. Let's see what's on there and what has been done.
So you're right. So endpoint security analysis. So everything in here, you're going to want to look at having not only the tool deployed, right, but make sure it's actually logging to the correct places, right, tuned for your environment, and that you're actually able to get some alerts and start to respond to there. So you guys, this is an established procedure for you. We'll go ahead and just mark this. Well, we'll wait. Maybe it's a successful roll. It's an established procedure, so you get the +3 modifier. All right, and so with that, you rolled an 11. So endpoint security protection analysis was a successful check for you. And then starting to look through what we have from an attacker perspective. Unfortunately, well, I'm going to round this up. I'm going to give it to you because one of the detections is an endpoint analysis, and there is some overlap between the two procedures there. So kind of starting with a gimme, right, of what I gave you there is, hey, okay, you ran that, it was successful. So you took a look at that endpoint, and that user is not supposed to have TeamViewer. So it seems like something's going on, right? The attackers are leveraging this. That's not something anyone else is supposed to be using, and isn't necessarily an accepted corporate tool at this point. So you have revealed one of the 3 on the first roll. Maybe Alex was right about loading the die. So with that, where do you want to go from there? The attackers are leveraging. Let me flip this over for you. The attackers are leveraging TeamViewer, at least to maintain some sort of C2 and data exfiltration at this point.
I think if we know it's been installed, right? TeamViewer is installed. The attackers trying to utilize this. Let's see if let's do a permission audit. See if anything has been changed with the user's account. Have they owned that system? Have they escalated their privileges on that system? Probably need to isolate that system. See what that system is talked to, but that's what I think.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because for TeamViewer to get installed, right, that is legitimate and authorized software. It's made by a company. It's not meant to be malware. It's just misuse of the trusted remote access software. So that means they somehow either convinced, like if we're looking at the incident at a higher level with the 4 cards that we still have in total, we don't exactly know what the initial compromise was, because we're still trying to figure out, was it phishing? How did the actor actually convince this user or did they just manually compromise an account and then install that software on their behalf? So I think that's kind of the part that may be tricky. Permissions audit could be interesting. That's going to look at where there could user modifications or some sort of changes to a user. I think the missing element that we still have is trying to figure out the initial compromise and how they even got to the point to install that software to the first place, whether it be phishing or using that misuse. What do you think about permissions audit, of why that could be helpful right now?
Yeah, you're spot on with that. We don't know. Is this patient zero?
Right.
I think maybe network threat hunting, if that's the case. Well, I would talk to the user, say, hey, how did this get on your system? Was it an email? Did somebody call you? The person I know that got scammed, they were called like, hey, download the software. I'm gonna send you a link. So if we can try to figure out that, Sean, can you throw us a nugget in there, like how is was it a spearfish? Like what was that?
Yeah, so you want to go through, using Zeek or Rita, look at some of that network traffic to figure out, hey, is there anything we can, see in addition to this team viewer activity? What else, might be able to be revealed here? Another established procedure. So you guys are going to get the +3 modifier here. And look at that. Again, another successful roll for you. So in this case, you get the initial compromise card here. And it was the attackers took advantage of Microsoft's direct send feature to send in some phishing emails. So when you were able to go back to do some network threat hunting, you poked around a little bit with that end user and saw, right around the time that TeamViewer was installed or started showing up, they got this email that came through looking like, a legitimate internal, another employee coworker sent them a message saying, hey, I'm having trouble accessing. Can you, pull down TeamViewer here and help me figure out, why I can't get to my files, right? So a little strange there. Direct send, certainly something that's out there. It's like I'm going to say, it's not a bug, it's a feature, right? But certainly something attackers are just as able to take advantage of here. All right,
I'm really glad that's a new card. that's a fun one for when we're doing our security testing, and it was identified by Black Hills with Steve Borish and his tooling. He has a really good blog post about it, but that changes some things for us to think about now, Malcolm.
Okay. All right. So with that, you got the phishing email came through. You figured that out. You don't necessarily know how and if the attackers have been pivoting throughout the environment or escalating their privileges. You do know that they've been using TeamViewer, or indicates they've been using TeamViewer to either exfiltrate, some data or use that as kind of their command and control channel. Where do you guys want to go now?
I think for us, it'd be useful to try and figure out the pivot and escalate, because we know that phishing was used. We don't know maybe per se if, well, it sounded like the email was sent to establish TeamViewer to be installed. So at least some user was coerced into doing that. And they established remote control using TeamViewer. I think the next step is to figure out maybe the pivot and escalate, to try and figure out what happened in the background of, were they able to either get to other systems and infect other users, or to establish remote control with TeamViewer on other systems, or were they able to escalate the privileges to an administrator to kind of roll out TeamViewer in the network and kind of have multiple different sessions in our environment. So we already used network threat hunting. What do you think, Malcolm? Do you have any ideas? We also have the other procedures we haven't really looked at.
Just to that comment, Alex, because you were successful in both roles, you still have the full procedure set here.
Right. Okay.
So we can reuse that card.
We could reuse, yeah.
But I kind of agree with you, and it will probably be easier to find out what other users were compromised. So we have, I guess we've identified patient zero, Spearfish, clicked on the link. Did that user account send out to any other things? What did that user account do? And what systems did that user account too. So I'm mixed between user and entity behavior analysis and memory analysis, because I don't know what he did on that computer when he got on. So yeah, that's where I'm stuck in those two.
Yeah, let's play that out then a little bit. So the user and behavior analytics, that's kind of looking at lateral movement and determining pivoting. So that could be useful for us to determine if that user is doing abnormal things that they shouldn't, of interacting with different systems in the network, workstation to workstation communication. That is definitely not abnormal. Why is Susie communicating with Bob's laptop or anything like that?
Absolutely.
That could be definitely useful. Memory analysis can be useful as well, because maybe they pivoted off to establish remote control fully with TeamViewer, but they had a different implant on the system that allowed them to pivot or escalate initially after the initial phishing scenario. What are you more leaning towards? Whether it be
Behavior
Yeah.
analytics.
All right, let's do that one. Let's throw it out there. It's not in
User
our
and entity.
+3, but hopefully we get lucky here.
Right. So this is just a pure roll for you. Right. So it's like logging, but it actually works. So here you're looking for things like multiple concurrent logins, impossible logins based on geography, so that impossible travel type thing, as well as unusual file access, password sprays, things like that. Right. All right. So no modifier for you there. We'll roll it. And unfortunately, you go and look, and for one reason or another, probably because the last person that set this up wasn't a security professional, was not helpful for your investigation here. So just as a reminder, that procedure card can't be called for another 3 turns, and also that's strike 1 towards an inject.
We're not concerned about that. We still have 7 more turns to go, Malcolm. We need 2 more cards to reveal, so not stressed about that just yet. That one failed, but I'm still liking the idea of what you're talking about, of the endpoint level, kind of doing another endpoint security protection analysis using our EDR that our company established before we were in here. So we have that +3 still, or doing an endpoint analysis itself of trying to figure out, is there something else that maybe occurred on the endpoint before the adversary planted or successfully used TeamViewer to establish remote control. What do you think, Malcolm?
So the incident response in me is saying, okay, maybe we should isolate this machine at this point. But I want to know what happened on the endpoint. I'm for endpoint analysis. Let's analyze that endpoint and see what we get out of it.
Do you think we should do the endpoint security analysis, the one we have with the +3, or the right?
Yeah, +3.
Let's do the +3 one again, Sean, if we can.
Sure. So the just to clarify for you guys too, right? So this is the standard endpoint analysis, which is much more of kind of forensics on an impacted box itself, right? Versus calling something like an EDR. So you guys want to go back with the endpoint security EDR style. So +3 modifier for you. All right, let's see what we got here. Success. All right. So you went back to your EDR. Things are still looking good. You had some success before. Unfortunately, you're not getting any additional insights from the tooling here. So, it might be a case of this one-off PC, just wasn't operating properly, right? Maybe the service crashed and you hadn't picked up on it, or for whatever reason, right? Your EDR is not helping you out to figure out if and how they pivoted or escalated rights, or looking for any sort of persistence mechanism.
Okay, so my thinking now is that although our company is relying on EDR quite a bit, we need to probably look at other tooling that's available to us to determine this incident as a whole. So I don't think anymore that the endpoint analysis or kind of deeper endpoint is going to help us. So now I'm kind of thinking about it more strategically at the network layer. Maybe there's more traffic that we can identify that was malicious, maybe coming out of our firewall, for example, or since the incident started in Microsoft 365, I'm starting to lean more towards doing a cloud analysis, because if it's abusing something like Microsoft Direct Send, a feature directly from Microsoft 365, I have to assume that maybe we can learn something from the cloud perspective. Maybe they pivoted it off there, or they gained access to some sort of cloud resource and are abusing that function or specific service in there, and then somehow pivoted off to TeamViewer. Malcolm, do you have any other ideas?
I think you're spot on with the Microsoft in the cloud. I was thinking more so fire log review. However, since they are using a cloud direct send vulnerability, I think that cloud event log analysis would be great. Let's pull that down.
Sure, let's try it.
All right. Cloud event log analysis. So certainly relevant. The direct send coming through Microsoft 365. What else have they seen? That's an established procedure. So you get the +3 modifier here. And unfortunately, no good for you. You unfortunately don't see anything up in your Microsoft 365 event logs that are helping you figure out your pivot, your rights escalation, or your persistence.
It's unfortunate. So we lose that one for a little bit. It failed. But we could start thinking about other cards that we haven't taken a look at just yet. I know we spent a lot of time so far at the network layer, and that maybe we do another threat hunt or try to look at the firelog review. But we haven't really looked at other procedures as well. One of my favorites that's in there that we got lucky enough to get a role is cyber deception. And it seems at least we could potentially use that to determine if any of those honeypots that we set up when we first started are still working. I do like the idea of potentially doing a firelog review. I think there's some sort of network artifact or hunt that we can do to find out maybe how they got the initial implant before installing TeamViewer. I'm still kind of stuck on that thinking. What do you think, Malcolm, between the two?
So with the cyber deception, assuming they compromise user one through direct send, they probably tried to hit the low hanging fruit, right? So they may have went after one of our honeypots. I like it, and I think it's time for us to reveal another card. I like it. Let's go with it, because that's what we were doing.
Cyber deception.
All right, cyber deception. You threw some honeypots out there, and you're hoping the attackers have bumped up against this, right? No modifier for you. Let's see what we've got.
20.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, your honeypot looked a little bit too much like a Christmas tree with every port and service open, responding to everything, and was not convincing. So unfortunately, a poor deployment there. You've got 4 turns remaining now, maybe a little less confident than a few turns ago.
Yeah, well,
and that is strike 2, by the way. So one more strike and you get an inject.
We're going to blame the intern for setting up that honeypot. So it was not us a new start at the company. It was some intern that poorly designed that. So that's okay. So
Joe's,
someone in the chat,
bashing on his keyboard. Yeah, he's telling you go for server analysis. Try and look at something beyond the endpoint.
And that makes sense. We've been really at the endpoint level. We've been looking at just network traffic in general. So maybe they were able to fish maybe a higher level administrator or somehow gain access to a server because a user was misconfigured to have administrator privileges or some special privileges on a server and pivot off there. And just making fun of the honeypot too. We just started, so you can't blame us either. But what do you think, Malcolm? Do we do server analysis?
Yeah, I'm with the server analysis. I feel like we're fishing now. We gotta hunt these bad guys down. I think looking at patient 0 to all the servers and domains we have in our environment be a good start.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, so server analysis. Let's see. Is this the success or does this get you your first inject?
20.
Unfortunately, this gets you your first inject. So we'll just shuffle these quickly and then let's see. Maybe it's a good one. You never know. We're going to draw an inject card here. Let's see. Way to plan ahead. I promise this was not set up. This looks pretty cheesy at this point, but that's all right. You brought in some threat emulation work, and that actually ends up revealing your persistence card, which in this case was abusing the machine account quota. So here, right, the attackers maybe picked up on the fact that you had a lot of things running in default in your environment and are able to create some machine accounts in the environment there.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Default setting allows anyone part of the authenticated users group, which is essentially anyone in the domain, to add up to 10 machine accounts. So that was a good reveal. And now we just need to figure out the pivot and escalate. I don't think we've tried the firewall log review, and I'm still kind of hung up on the idea of maybe doing like a network-based hunt or something to that effect. We kind of lost the cyber deception. Server analysis is gone. Cloud event log is gone. But we also get back the user entity behavior analytics card. So maybe there was some sort of activity that was abnormal on that end because we initially failed that role. So I'm kind of leaning towards right now maybe replaying that card just to determine if that thinking is right, of the user that they compromised was doing some abnormal-ish looking behavior, and that maybe could trigger on our tooling, or the firewall log review that we perform can identify some other domains or some IP addresses or some sort of services that are punching out of our firewall that look a little bit fishy, and we can spot them like that. You have any ideas, Malcolm?
Yeah, we need to win this. I am stuck in between going back to network threat hunting, just based off of them using Impacket. What other accounts did they get compromised? Did they how many accounts did they add? What those accounts are doing. But I think behavior analytics will give us that more of that detail, and I think that may be what we're looking for. So I'm down for behavior analysis, going back to that one and seeing if we can pull.
You give it another shot. We still have 3 turns, so
Not to totally
switching
talk
too
you
much.
out of it.
Good.
Not to totally talk you out of it. One thing you haven't hit on that I don't know, maybe is worth considering, maybe not, is you've been doing a lot of focus on endpoint specific tools. You looked at the specific server, but you haven't gone to a SIM. And even though we said you haven't necessarily had a security program in the past, you do have the procedure available. So some logs out there are being collected and centralized to an extent.
That's a good point too. And the SIM is our should hopefully, if it's configured correctly, we don't know. It doesn't seem like it was like properly configured since it's not our +3, but hopefully it's enough to maybe where the user behavior analytics is being fed into there. So hopefully we can get lucky enough where
True, with the event manager.
that SIM is giving us what we need.
Can you talk us out of it? Let's do it.
Yeah, because it's really that you talk to. All right, let's try it out. Let's try the SIM. We're just hoping now that
For the SIM,
the company created strong logging and centralized everything.
fortunately not. There's a failure roll for you. All right. So you went to the SIM. Unfortunately, because it was not set up by someone that necessarily knew what they were doing, is really haphazardly collecting stuff. Some systems are feeding in, others are not, and the retention was set to about a day worth of logs. So not a lot of visibility for you in this SIM.
Okay, so that leads me to, and based on the advice from Sean, I don't know if the user behavior analytics or endpoint is going to really help us at this point. I'm now leaning more towards a firewall log review, or someone mentioned in the chat like a network threat hunt in terms of finding their activity, because I'm starting to think that there's some sort of pivoting going on where they're able to get the initial foothold maybe from spear phishing and pivot it off, and we're able to establish remote control with TeamViewer. So I'm leaning between the two. I like the idea of doing and playing it safe first with the network threat hunting, since we get the +3, and that's a really strong control that our company was able to utilize. So since we can run it again, that may be a little bit stronger than a firewall log review. But what are your feelings, Malcolm?
Yeah. We haven't done crisis management or isolation yet. There's a lot of machine accounts that have been added. we haven't really isolated anything in this network, and they're moving laterally. We know it. We think they are. I have a feeling that's going to be one of our two. We have two roles, so we got to be decisive in it. Network threat hunting, we're good at. We always kind of hit on it. We got some really good principles. But I think we should choose definitely one of those two before it's over to see what that
So you think
yields
play it
us.
safe at the end with network threat hunting if we have to, and
Yeah.
use either isolation or crisis management first?
I like it.
I guess we just have to choose then. Yeah, we have to choose which one then. Isolation itself sounds interesting since maybe it kind of leans more towards the endpoint though, which is why I'm kind of hesitant because of the advice that we got.
Yeah, so looking at the description here,
Versus
just to help
crisis
kind of
management.
inform your decision is, yeah, this is specifically being able to isolate a known infected host, right? So you've got the scope of that phishing email hitting there. You've got the box that it started the whole response process with the team viewer. You can isolate that machine, but I don't think this is going to help you identify other unknown touch points at this point.
Yeah. What can you pull up the crisis management card so we can take a look at that?
Yeah, let's bring up description of crisis management. This is really impacting people. So if your data has been compromised, right, you've got the processes in place from a regulatory standpoint, as well as just kind of the general PR standpoint to notify those customers.
That sounds like more like it'd be effective for exfiltration, like those types of cards, or like C2 and exfil, because that implies some sort of data was lost, and that the threat
Right.
actor is maybe trying to convince us. So now I'm even more hesitant between isolation and crisis management, just because it sounds like we don't need to really focus on the endpoints and put more effort towards the network layer.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I can get behind that.
Should we give the network threat hunting a shot? Hopefully we get a strong plus
Come on.
roll.
Let's do it.
All right, network threat hunting. Again, let's see if we can find anything. You've got your +3 modifier here. Man, another fail. Right. So unfortunately not. You go back to that same, Zeke or Rita instance, and really nothing in there showing any internal pivoting or access rights escalations for you.
That's a shame. We have one last turn remaining, Malcolm. But we are experienced security professionals, and we're gonna make sure we make our strike and known in the company that we're working for. So we're gonna solve this incident no matter what for them.
So we haven't done fire log review at all, right?
We haven't, and that's at least closely enough related to the network threat hunt. So it's kind of our last ditch attempt. We do lose the +3 modifier, but I feel like we've had our string of the bad luck already, and maybe where the law of big numbers is going to look good on us. So I like the idea of the firewall log review since it's playing on the same ideas and principles. Maybe the threat hunt failed, but it's at least tying that activity together for us. So I'm leaning towards that one the most. If not, I know the cloud event log analysis also failed, but those two are maybe speaking more towards me, especially knowing that we're no longer really focused on the endpoint layer.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this last shot. When in doubt, your events, your alerts fail, you can always go back and look at the logs. For the win, I guess we'll do fire log review.
Let's do it. This is where my weighted dice really comes in. Let's get that +20.
All right, firewall log review, unestablished. So you're just going for the straight roll. Unfortunately, not. You have been unable to solve the incident here, which is unfortunate. In the real world, there is no end to the game, right? But in this case, you ended up having, going back to the idea of someone setting up the environment with a lot of defaults and not necessarily security expertise in mind. You had some misconfigured certificate templates. So the attacker was able to go after your ADCS server and start pivoting that way. All right. So unfortunately, in an unfortunate role for you, I guess the weighted die got held up in the mail. Weren't able to solve all four. But I don't know. I mean, hopefully this helps some folks kind of understand how to play backdoors and breaches, get some exposure. Definitely go online and play. You can pick from the core deck to any of the multiple expansion decks in here, and hope it makes some tabletopping a little more fun. Any closing thoughts from you guys?
I don't know if we could blame the intern on the ADCS one. That's a penetration tester's favorite, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Hopefully, this was a good experience and exposure. If this is the first time you're checking the game out, this is pretty simple to kind of play on your own and kind of gamify. So I hope at least it gets you thinking in terms of how to make a better experience for your tabletop exercises and really test your incident response plan.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. It sucks, you know, the roles didn't go our way, but I feel like we were on the right path with our detection mechanisms and our thought processes. Like if we could have got the user behavior analysis, you know, we could have pulled that card. So I like it.
So then with that, we'll end it here. We'll work on fixing some of the technical glitches here, and hope to do these more often, right? If folks found it interesting just to hear us kind of stumble through the response process, let me know. We'd be looking to do some more of these, and ideally start crafting some of the scenarios around some real world incidents so we can talk about things in the news that you're hearing about or new attack techniques and bring that into this gamified process. Otherwise, thanks for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again at the next one.
Thanks.
Thanks all.